right. Welcome to Lombardi's Legends podcast. Dane, as always, here with Wags. And Wags, free agency, free agent frenzy is upon us. And what bigger news than the Packers bringing back Devondre Campbell, inside linebacker for the Packers? I was floored to see Devondre back in Green Bay so early. Very excited to have him. How are you feeling tonight?
Great. We've been saying from the start, he's the priority. We said he and his agent were in Green Bay a few weeks ago, or actually close to a month ago now. I am a little surprised that they reached an agreement this early as well. I thought Devondre would test things out, but certainly with the legal tampering, he and his agent had to have a pretty good feel for what offers were going to be out there for him. And at the end of the day, he clearly wanted to be back in Green Bay and felt the love. And I was pretty happy with the number too. We got him for basically $10 million a year. We'll get some of the finer details of the contract. It's a 4 to 5 year deal potentially, but I think the Packers structured it in such a way that they can get out from under it if they need to, as Devondre will be over age 30 in a couple of seasons. But if he keeps playing the way he did last season, it's got to be music to a lot of Packer fans' ears to see the organization finally invest in this inside linebacker group when we had a good one. And I'm really, really happy that they were able to make it happen.
Yeah, Wags, you mentioned that. Well, the devil's always in the details of these contracts, but end of the day, similar guys at his position are making upwards of $19 million a year. So, Devondre Campbell making anywhere like in the $10 to $11 million range, instantly hats off to the front office and frankly to Devondre Campbell for coming to an agreement. It's clear he wants to stay in Green Bay as well. Gives Packers, just a lot of stability in that position that I'm not sure I was so sure we were going to have. So able to get Devondre back. What kind of impact does this make on the defense? And Wags, what kind of impact does this make, though, maybe on the rest of free agency? Because we can check this one off the list as far as a position of need now.
Yeah, we saw the impact last year. There's no reason to expect any different. He's a key to the success of this defense that played really well for most of the year last year, had some injuries at times that they had to deal with, but he just is such a cog and what he can do. He can cover sideline to sideline. The dude doesn't come off the field, 3-down player on the defensive side of the ball. And most importantly, I think in pass coverage, he's able to hold his own really well while still attacking the line of scrimmage against the run. And he just had a phenomenal season last year. So even if he doesn't repeat that performance quite to that level, if he comes close, I think the Packers are going to be really pleased with having Devondre back in the fold. And clearly, it really stabilizes things. There's a domino effect here, I think, on the defensive side of the ball specifically, because we've got a young and talented secondary, and we're going to talk about Preston Smith in a minute, but with Rashawn Gary manning one side on the edge, Devondre Campbell in the middle just means so much to this defense, Dane. Now you can focus your attention perhaps on the defensive line in the draft. And that's, I think, a position on this defense that we haven't quite had the level of talent that we need and the depth that we need in order to take that defense to the next level. But we've got some really good, talented players there as well. But we'll be able to, I think, supplement. We can invest in another edge guy in the draft, perhaps, to kind of have someone up and coming come in and be able to be at that position group. So Devondre Campbell just kind of brings everything together. And I think a lot of fans were very, very nervous that the Packers defense was going to take a big step back if they were not able to work something out and bring them back into the fold.
Wags, Is this a culture shift a little bit of how the front office views a position? This is a Packers front office and a Packers team that have operated, although at times differently from one another. It's been a long time of, I think, a collective thinking of how they view free agency, how they view the draft. If you go back, you look at the metrics, even if it's a different position group, similar kinds of guys they take in the draft. I know this is a little bit different, but historically speaking, the Packers don't invest big in guys getting close to 30. And historically speaking, they don't invest in the middle linebacker position. Are we seeing a shift theoretically, or was Devondre Campbell just so darn good and all pro last season that he kind of breaks the mold and the team just felt he was too good in their system to move away from?
I think it's the latter. He's a guy that you can break the rules for a little bit. You go back and look at who they've had at the inside linebacker group. No disrespect to any of those guys, but you haven't had someone that's clearly at the type of level that Devondre Campbell's at. Now, you could argue that they've passed on guys in the draft or haven't been aggressive enough in drafting linebackers early on day one or day two that maybe would fit that mold. And so you can go back and play that game. And I think a lot of Packer fans could succinctly make that argument. But then you're sacrificing whoever they got at those other picks as well. So it's easy to play that guessing game. I think in the draft is where it's really manifested itself more so than free agency in my mind, because there's no one. I mean, I know Blake Martinez got signed for $10 million a year by the Giants a couple seasons ago. I didn't think he was worth that much money. Devondre Campbell, I do think the Packers may have even got a little bit of a bargain here because he is 28 years old, and I think that may have lessened his value to some other teams, and they decided that both sides of the parties here, Devondre Campbell is very valuable to the Packers and vice versa. So I think it worked out where the Packers didn't have to break the bank. I saw, look at the Jaguars. They just paid Ali Khan $15 million a year. Now, part of that is when you're the Jacksonville Jaguars, you pay a premium for outside free agents. The Packers have had some of that in the past, but Devondre Campbell's a guy that was on the team last year. They have that rapport, that familiarity. So I think they were able to work this out and make that happen. So, Dane, I think it's an exception to the rule more so than it's going to be a new trend for this Packers front office moving forward. Or do you disagree with that?
No, not at all. I think this is he was just too darn good. He fits exactly what this defense is looking to do. He's dynamic off the field. He's dynamic on the field. He's a guy who can call the plays. I mean, he's just doing what we need him to do. And we saw how much better this defense was with a sure tackler that can run sideline to sideline, leaps and bounds, Wags. And I think that Devondre Campbell is a guy who the Packers look at as a leader, not just this year, but going forward for the next couple seasons to see Barry's vision through on this defense. This is an ascending defense, and we'd be talking about what a loss and a huge question mark in the middle if we were building on what we were doing all year last year, getting better and better. We saw them at their greatest in the playoffs, and then to see Devondre Campbell go, I think would have been a huge letdown, frankly, for this defense. And I think for a lot of us fans to have him back, Wags, the sky's the limit now. I think we build around. We've got a ton of talent across the board on the defense, and Campbell is going to be that anchor for this defense for the foreseeable future.
Yeah, for sure. So let's talk about the other big signing today. Preston Smith extended, and both you and I predicted that could be a possibility as well. Certainly was not a foregone conclusion, but I personally am very happy that the Packers and Preston Smith were able to work something out to bring him back. But Dane, I'm going to turn over the analysis over to you on this one. Break this down for us. What does this mean for the Packers and for Preston Smith to bring him back in the fold at a team friendlier deal? And we're going to get a few more seasons out of him as well.
Wags, I'm ecstatic. I am absolutely ecstatic to bring Preston back. no disrespect to Zadaria Smith, but I think the Packers chose the right Smith to be able to bring back. Preston coming off the back end, or excuse me, Za'Darius coming off the back injury. Phenomenal pass rusher, but Preston Smith. We say it week in and week out in this. I mean, he missed his first game. I think you mentioned this last podcast. He missed his first game last season, and dude was back the following week. He is available. He's somebody that shows up week in and week out. I would argue his down year in 2020 was less to do with him and more to do with scheming and putting him in the wrong position. This defense, we saw Barry last year put Preston Smith in a ton of different situations to be successful. And I think that he exceeded in all of those situations. He's another veteran guy who you need guys like Preston Smith to win. But not only that, he's an impact player for this defense. His sack numbers might not always be double digit, but he does all the little things. He sets the edge incredibly well in the run game. They ask him to get out on some passing downs. He, of course, gets after the quarterback. They just scheme things with Preston Smith that they don't really do with anybody else. And also, Wags, and then I want to hear your take on the Preston Smith situation. Talk about the development and the growth of Rashawn Gary. This continues. We're not asking all chips are in on Rashawn Gary. It takes a little bit pressure off the young man who had a career year last year and who's still pointing way upwards, to allow Preston Smith and Rashawn to still be on the same roster for the foreseeable future is absolutely fantastic, I think, for Rashawn Gary's growth. And we talk about the middle linebacker position being checked. Now, all of a sudden, we're still looking for that third pass rusher, but now we're not looking for that second and third pass rusher. So I think it really solidifies this rush game. And I think now the Packers have options either via free agency or the draft to go and find that third guy. But it's a heck of a lot harder to find two guys at a premium position instead of one guy. And what Preston brings to this defense is stability, aggressiveness, and a guy who can do just a little bit of everything. And by the way, the contract is fantastic. The cap hits are not terrible for him. And really effectively, these are kind of practically one-year deals, year-to-year deals for them. But I thought it was a good deal to get Preston Smith back in the building. It helps the defense immensely.
Yeah, for sure. And Preston Smith, you said all the reasons you laid out are why he brings value to this defense. He's one of those players that isn't necessarily, owning the box score every week, but he makes your team better. He makes your defense better. Even when he has the quote unquote down seasons or the quote unquote down games, he's doing everything the coaching staff was asking him to do in order to help the team win. 2 years ago, he was dropping back into coverage an awful lot. You talk about the scheme things, and you're going to have some of that as an outside linebacker, but the way that they were using him was just atrocious, in my opinion, under Coach Patton and his staff. And he didn't complain. He may have been kind of down a little bit internally. I know that they had Rashawn Gary start over him one game a couple of seasons ago. So that was kind of a big thing. But incentive-laden contract, he comes back to the Packers, proves it, and fell one short of getting his escalating bonus if he would have gotten a sack, his 10th sack in that final game against Detroit. But the Packers, you know what? They rip up his previous contract, extend him, and he gets rewarded anyway. And so I couldn't be happier for Preston Smith. This is a guy that certainly goes unheralded at times. I think fans get a little impatient. You think of your edge guys, they need to get 12, 13, 14 sacks in a season in order to be getting value. And the Packers aren't paying him as one of the top line pass rushers in the league. But I think for what they do pay him, he does an awful lot that some of those guys don't do, like setting the edge and helping this team against the run. So I appreciate the approach that they took here, and good for Preston for being willing to come back and join the team under difficult circumstances last year, particularly, but his patience got rewarded, and I think that's going to help the Packers out as well. So Dane, then we're talking about the cuts. So one was very anticipated. One's not a shock, but a little bit of a surprise for me. So Zadaria Smith, I think everyone pretty much knew, it was foregone conclusion he was going to be gone. There was a little bit of rumbling that perhaps they would try to work something out with him and do an extension. At the end of the day, it seems like there was just two sides that were going in a different direction, is a diplomatic way to put it. But best wishes to Za'Darius. He was obviously hurt most of this last season. The first 2 seasons with the Packers, played his heart out, had 2 phenomenal seasons. As far as I'm concerned, he fulfilled his duties. You can't blame a guy for being hurt. Certainly some of the circumstances around how that went down may be questionable, but nonetheless, I think most Packer fans can be happy with what we got out of Zadaria Smith, but it was clearly time to move on. And I think we're still in a really strong position. Heck, we proved it last year that we can win and have a good, solid defense without Zadaria Smith. So any other thoughts on that move, Dane, or kind of how that impacts the team moving forward?
No, we knew we were going to have to make some tough decisions. Now, if we were sitting here and both Preston and Za'Darius were gone right now, I'd be a little bit more nervous. But I think that goes to the talent that we have right now with Preston and Rashawn. I feel comfortable in the position. We can always get better. I think we'll look to grow there. But Za'Darius, fantastic time, even though short in Green Bay, absolutely made his mark. But you're going to have to make tough decisions. And coming off the back injury, it was probably time. I think Za'Darius is going to be able to make a ton of money on the open market. He should go take that money and hopefully he can win somewhere else. But I think now the Packers can really focus. It's nice for us, I think, as fans and also as the organization. We know the direction we're going in a certain degree right now. I feel comfortable where this team is headed, and I'm really, really excited about it. We wish Za'Darius well, but it's time to move on, and we're retooling right now on this defense, and the sky's the limit.
So I got to ask you then about the other move they made. Yeah. Billy Turner, we knew he was definitely a candidate to possibly get cut. I was a little bit surprised. I will own the fact that I felt like he was more likely a restructure candidate, and he would be cut after next season. Packers decided to make the move now, and Billy Turner gone after I thought a really solid season last year. So saves them $3.1 million. So it's not a ton of money that they're saving by cutting them, but apparently they felt like they've got the guys in place and they can make this move and move on from Billy Turner. So Dane, what are your thoughts on that decision today?
I think it's pretty obvious now. It wasn't obvious before cutting Billy Turner, but now that it's happened, Yosh Nijman's going to start the year at right tackle. And I've got to think that Elgton Jenkins is probably going to end up being the starting right tackle when he gets healthy. It's really hard to invest in great offensive linemen that continue to play guard in this league. It just sometimes that doesn't work that way, especially look at the salary cap and the way it is. Elgton Jenkins, I think long-term probably projects to be a tackle. You make more money there. You make that impact there in the NFL. And if he can do it, if you're him, why wouldn't you want to do that? So I think the Packers probably see the writing on the wall. However, if Yosh Nijman balls out at right tackle this season, Wags, Elgton Jenkins may end up at guard either way. So it's going to be a fascinating thing. All of that said, if we're talking picture perfect in a perfect world, I would have loved to have had Billy Turner back because you can never have too many offensive linemen in this league. Look at last season is a prime example of the number of injuries that happened across the offensive line. And we were calling on everybody and those guys stepped up. So I hate to see Billy Turner go from that angle because you always want guys. And Billy had that flexibility that the Packers love, could play tackle, could play guard, could play across the offensive line. But I think clearly we see a direction forward with what the Packers are going to do. Yosh has earned that responsibility and that job, I think, to at least compete in camp at right tackle. And clearly now, Wags, the Packers are drafting an offensive tackle at some point, I think, as well, or kind of one of those flex guys that can play tackle or guard and swing around a little bit. They invest every year in the offensive line. Historically, lately, it's been more interior guys, but I wouldn't be surprised if they invest in somebody who can play the outside a little bit more, come this draft. It might not be a premium pick, but wouldn't be shocked 3rd, 4th, 5th round if we're not throwing some picks again at the offensive line.
Yeah, in the last couple of years, we've been able to pick up guys on the fringes, Jared Valdir, and I'm
Dennis Kelly now.
Dennis Kelly, thank you. Yeah, so that can still happen. I expect they'll probably bring in a veteran at some point. It's also speaks to how I think confident they are in their young interior offensive line, which we talked about a couple episodes as well. And you've got a luxury at that position at the guard spots that we're able to talk about Elton Jenkins coming back and changing positions from instead of being one of the top guards in the league as he comes back from injury, you move him out to right tackle because you're very confident in Runyon Jr. and you're very confident, obviously, in Myers at center. So we've got and Rice Newman at right guard. So I think those 3 guys got better and better as the season went along last year. The only question now is going to be that depth. So are we going to have young depth, or are we going to be able to find some guys to bring in and compete with those young guys, but also provide that depth that the offensive line will need? Even if we don't go through the rash of injuries that we did last year, there's going to be injuries on the offensive line at some point. So we've got to be ready to have some guys that are able to step in and it's not just, a complete disaster. And they did a heck of a job last year, but it's not always work out that way. So we'll see. But like you said earlier, tough decisions did need to get made. So, Dane, I think I just to sum up an active day today.
Active day. Yeah.
I did not expect either of the signings that the Packers made to happen today. I was cautiously optimistic that we might extend Preston, that we might bring back Devondre, but I was thinking that was going to be more mid to later in the week type news. And obviously you never know what can happen. Preston was under contract, so he was not going to be signing elsewhere. But that said, they could have just cut him as well. So, it's certainly exciting news for the Packers fans out there that were very, very worried about how this free agency might go. So any overall thoughts from you before we take a quick break and then talk a little bit about the latest on Davante Adams?
Just that, rumors continue to swirl. I woke up this morning to the thought that Rasul Douglas could be back as well. Now it doesn't seem necessarily like that was an accurate report that came out. I mean, it's never done until it's done.
Hold on. Let's hold that. We can talk about him too. But let's go ahead and sorry to interrupt, but
go for it.
I want to talk about what's next. Let's keep that for after the break. So why don't we talk about our sponsor, DraftKings Sportsbook, official sports betting partner of the NFL. And of course, NFL season's over, but DraftKings got some great deals on college basketball with March Madness kicking off this week. Or if you're into the NBA, those some good deals there. So, Dane, bring us up to speed. How has your wife, Andrea, been faring in the last week when it comes to DraftKings Sportsbook?
Well, I'll tell you what, I think all eyes now, Wags, are on March Madness and college basketball. Wisconsin versus Colgate. You're telling me we're not taking Wisconsin? Come on, man. I know they've been down, but it's all because DraftKings Sportsbook is just an awesome sponsor. You got to use this promo code, folks. Use promo code TPPN. You're receiving money back. Wags has all the details on it, but it's so much fun. My wife, Andrea, she always watched football. She was always a Packers fan, but DraftKings Sportsbook has made watching a ton of other games and other sports that much more fun and enjoyable, all because she used that promo code TPPN, downloaded the app. It's just that easy, placing bets, having a ton of fun doing it, and Wags making a little bit of money on the side as well. No problem with that. So DraftKings Sportsbook, promo code TPPN, make it happen.
Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app now. Use promo code TPPN. Bet $5 on any college hoops team to win and get $200 in free bets if they do. If they win, you win with promo code TPPN this week at DraftKings Sportsbook. 21 plus, restrictions apply. See show notes for details. So, Dane, I'm sorry to have interrupted you before that. So back to Rasul Douglas, and then we'll talk to Davante Adams. So you're talking, there's some rumors out there. I don't know that it's off the table. Last week, it seemed like a lot of folks said, nope, Packers are not going to bring Rasul Douglas back. Then there was some rumors, as you alluded to, that maybe not the case, but what's your read on kind of where they are? Because I know a lot of fans out there, now they've got their eyes set squarely on Rasul Douglas, and he's the guy that the Packers want to bring back now.
Yeah, Wags, I still don't think he's coming back to Green Bay. That's my gut feeling. Love Rasul Douglas. It's not, I don't take a lot of credence in the reports when Rasul himself tweets out, quote, I don't know where y'all are getting your info from, end quote. I think that's a pretty definitive that maybe it's not as cut and dry or set in stone as some fans might like.
And not close either in terms of talks, right? Because he wouldn't come out and say that if they had hammering out final details, to say the least. But I will say this. It depends what the market is. Maybe there's other teams out there that say, well, this guy had a heck of a season, but are we really going to invest in him considering his track record? And so could that be to the Packers' benefit? We will see. We're still in that legal tampering period. And so if Rasul Douglas is one of those guys where if there's not a deal announced tomorrow, Wednesday, or Thursday, and it gets to be kind of the end of the week, the weekend, or heck, even into next week, maybe that starts playing into the Packers' favor.
Yeah.
Now, does that mean that they'll still be able to bring him back? There's only so many resources that they have. And so I think there's a lot of fans that say, well, we need Rasul. We also need to pay MBS and bring him back. Right. And, you're going on the line. And, what about the external free agents? Unfortunately, we can't sign everyone. So we're just going to have to make some decisions somewhere on some of these guys. And so I think the first domino to fall for me is still keep an eye on Jair Alexander extension. Because that's going to be something that's also going to free up some money for this coming season, as that will lower his cap number. And I think the Packers probably really want to take care of Jair Alexander before they sign a guy like Rasul Douglas. And so it doesn't mean that they will or won't bring back Rasul Douglas, but there's kind of an order of operations here. Jair is the guy that they need to focus on paying, and he will get paid. But I just don't see a scenario where Rasul Douglas ends up signing a 3-year deal for, I don't know, 35 million. And meanwhile, Jair Alexander sitting home being like, okay, right. So I think they got to take care of the number one guy first. And that's just my read on it. We'll see how it shakes out. But I agree, Dane. I don't think there's a high likelihood that Rasul Douglas is going to be back in Green Bay. Love the dude for the team this year, but I've been saying, and you've been saying all along, that he's more of a luxury for this team than a need. And I think that's just the reality is where we stand.
Yeah, he was fantastic last year, and he's going to hopefully bank on that, right? In the open market, somebody's going to pay him. But with the limited resources the Packers have, even with some of this maneuvering, it's tough sledding, especially when you've got a $20 million franchise tag hanging over your head in Davante Adams. And I think that's a good transition, Wags. Davante, report came out this morning. Davante Adams says he will not play under the tag. Wags, that doesn't surprise me at all. This is part of negotiation. If I were him, I'd say the same thing, and I'm the biggest Packers fan out there. But, I mean, he's not going to play under the tag, especially when we see somebody like Christian Kirk making what he's making. With all due respect, he ain't Davante Adams. Davante Adams is looking to get paid. The question becomes, will it be the Green Bay Packers?
Well, yes and no. I mean, here's the thing. The Packers, this could turn out to be a longer negotiation than I would have expected, because Davante is at some point, unfortunately, because of the rules of the franchise tag, he's going to have to decide if he wants to sit out games or sit out the season. And I don't know if you're Davante Adams, and you're 29 years old, if you want to be sitting out any seasons at this point, I fully understand his position, and it is a leverage point. I don't really think it's that. I don't think it's really all that shocking that he says I'm not going to play under the tag. To your point, it's one of those things where no one thinks he was going to.
Right.
So at the end of the day, I feel like the Packers probably have a deal in place, or the structure that they're coming at it is it's a contract that might be 4 years or 5 years with some of those void type things, or it's really a 2-year deal, but it's announced as a 4 or 5 year deal. And Davante, he can be upset about that all he wants, but he can either take that and cash the check now, or he's not going to be able to make as much under the tag, or he's going to be sacrificing income or the ability to increase his leverage by sitting out games in the short term this season. So, he's got to do what's best for him. I get that, but I don't think there's any reason for either side to panic here. They're just going to continue to negotiate, and this just might take some time. The good news for you Packer fans that really want Davante Adams back, he's not going anywhere for a while. They've got until July to negotiate a long-term deal. At that point, if they don't have something done, well, then maybe get nervous. If you're a fan that says they should just trade Davante Adams, they can still do that. I don't think that'll happen, but it's certainly something that they could do. They own his rights, and if they feel like they can get a good return for him and that's the direction they want to go, they could do that. Now, the other big thing out there is what's number 12 doing? Why haven't any extensions or deals been announced with him? And that's kind of out there. And I expect that if we don't have something from Rodgers and the Packers by tomorrow, I'm going to start scratching my head a little bit. But that does play a little bit into the Davante Adams situation. But let's be real. Those are two independent negotiations, and Davante Adams is not going to cease any of his leverage just because Aaron does the nice thing and maybe gives up a little bit of money so the Packers can pay him more. So he's under no obligation to take less than what he thinks he should get as right now the top wide receiver on the market if he was able to sign elsewhere.
So how does with Davante Adams, how do you feel that this impacts the team throughout the rest of free agency, though? Because right now there's a $20 million weighting down their cap. And my understanding is he could stay away from the team until week 1. If he doesn't sign the tag, he doesn't sign the tag. So he's under no obligation to do that. So do you have any concern, Wags? Reports are that the team's far apart from Davante Adams. How far can this go before somebody blinks? And I think that's the bigger question, is how long does this play out over the next weeks, months? What's your initial read? What's your gut feeling?
It could take a while, but I don't think it affects their free agency at all. And maybe you'll disagree. But my feeling is they've got their best case and their worst case, scenario lined out as far as how it's going to affect the cap this season. You have to remember that even if they do get a long-term deal done, it's going to save them some against the cap versus what his cap number will be if he's tagged for this next season. But it's not like they're going to be freeing up all of a sudden $10-15 million to be able to go out there and sign another high-end free agent. So I don't think it really affects all that much. That money's kind of spoken for. And what's really going to free up the most next is the the Rodgers deal and the Jair deal, and then perhaps a couple of additional restructures around the margins. But outside of that, the Packers are not going to end up with, $20-30 million to spend and get super aggressive. I know they've been linked to some of these free agents, but let's be real. The way that this market's going to go, I just don't really think it's very realistic for Packer fans to expect that we're going to be active and getting any other marquee free agents that are going to be out there.
Are you surprised by other free agent wide receivers and how much money they're bringing in? Some of these guys that I would say are slightly above average, but not even in the same class as Davante Adams, are making bank right now. It seems like the Jacksonville Jaguars are bankrolling guys left and right, but even some other wide receivers as well. Are you surprised by that? Because I saw Devontae today. Darius Slay, the DB, said Devontae's looking for 30 million, kind of with like a laugh face, and Devontae liked that. So no surprise there with Devontae seeking big money. But how do you think this impacts the Packers' negotiations with Devontae? Because if I'm Adams, I'm going, well, I'm looking around going, I think I can make more than what I even thought I was going to make going into this thing.
Yeah, it's a really interesting question. I said the Jaguars have like the Jaguars tax that they have to pay to get guys. So you have to sort of throw that out a little bit, but it's he's got to be sitting there saying, well, if these guys are making that, what? Come on now. I think teams we've seen make terrible free agency signings. They get desperate. They've got all this money, and rather than going out and getting the top player at a position like a Christian Kirk, they feel like, well, let's go out and get him at a lower price, forgetting that he's not worth nearly what they've just paid him, even if they didn't have to pay for the top of the wide receiver market. Look at the Dallas Cowboys. They just had to cut Amari Cooper last week. They invested so much in that wide receiver group a couple years ago, and that doesn't always work out. The ball can only go to so many guys. You only get so many targets. So, I don't know. I think at the end of the day, Davante Adams is probably looking more at DeAndre Hopkins' deal with Arizona. That was kind of an outlier for wide receivers before Christian Kirk kind of came in today. But Hopkins is right around, I think, 27 million a year. But some folks that are smarter than I am have said that when you break down that contract, it's not really a 5-year, 27 million per year type deal. So I think at the end of the day, the Packers hold all the cards here. And we've been saying this for weeks and weeks. It sucks for Devontae. He deserves every cent that he thinks he should get based on his performance the last 3-4 seasons. But the reality is, because of his age and the fact that the rules are in place to allow the franchise tag, the Packers have him over a barrel. There's not really anything he can do about that other than if he wants to sit out. So we'll see if it comes to that. But until it does, I remain kind of in the camp that the Packers should hold strong from a negotiation standpoint. It's what's best for the team and for the organization, and that's what I think they're going to probably do.
Wags, wrapping this up, what are you looking forward to most the remainder of the week? Anything in particular? Are you curious where MVS goes? Because I say that very pointedly because I don't think he's coming back to Green Bay. What are you looking forward to the rest of the week?
Yeah, I need to see when Aaron Rodgers' extension gets done. That's the next thing that I'm thinking of. And honestly, I'd love to see Jair, but I don't know that that's this week. They could do that in April. I mean, that could be any time. The only reason I'm thinking about Jair extension is just because of their current cap situation. It would free up a little bit of money. It's his lowest cap number for next season. So if they're able to get either of those deals done, I think that's really what we're going to be looking for. That's for me. Now, as far as MVS is concerned, I'll be honest with you, MVS, go get your money. I would not. I'm sorry. I'm just going to go on the record. I would not want MVS back for 10 million a year for the Packers. If that's his market right now, I wouldn't be thrilled with that personally. I'd rather go and get the next guy. MVS, he's improved. He improved his consistency a little bit, but hasn't always, been able to stay on the field at times, and doesn't necessarily high point the ball on his deep routes. And that's his number one strength, is his vertical speed. But he doesn't seem to be able to get consistency there. Now you're not going to win those routes at a high percentage. I understand that, but I don't know. I feel like if he can go out there and get paid that money, good for him. But I'm not losing sleep over that one at all.
Wags, I think we've said it all here. We're going to be back in a few days talking more free agency and more Green Bay Packers. Wags, safe to say we got an awful lot more to go before this whole thing settles out and the draft happens, because I think there's a lot more to come out of Green Bay as soon as probably tomorrow morning. I wouldn't be shocked if we're hearing more and more news, more rumors about where this Packers are going. But right now, we know the direction they're going. They're really banking on this defense. They're starting to buy in, keeping some of their own. We should be just as excited keeping our guys as some teams are about signing free agents. That means we've got some good guys on the team already. I am excited about who's coming back to Green Bay.
For sure. And Dane, I did not think we would be doing a podcast tonight. After an active day today, we both said, well, we got to jump on. We got a lot to talk about. So we'll see how active the rest of the week is. I think it'll start to slow down quite a bit once we get Rodgers details. So for my own sanity, I'm hoping that's tomorrow. But
yep.
Dane, I think it's safe to say the Packers are in a strong position now headed into the rest of the offseason. So I'm excited to see how it unfolds.
Yeah, and just shout out to everybody who's watching us live tonight. Ton of people on, but Matt, Shadid, Edgar, thanks everybody. We're just reading some of the comments now. We appreciate you all. You always find us the next day on iTunes, wherever you get your podcasts as well. But thanks so much for listening tonight.
Yep, as always, be legendary and go Pack,
go. Pack, go.